Hello everybody and welcome back to another On the Workbench session. We got another Song of Ice and Fire miniature. It's got some unique elements to it. I think this is like a character out of the box set, so it's not one of just another part of a unit or whatever. And since you can actually see a fair amount of the horse here because of its pose, I thought, see this dapple gray horse over here? It's a little bit different type than I've tried before. I thought that would be fun, and I thought it might be fun to do it with the oils, and we'll try some of the new colors. So these are some of those new Gamlin colors, and you can always tell by this type, they say the kind of open typeface like this. Now we've got some of our regulars here, and that's your dark with the red outline, but then we also have these two new colors that I thought could be fun. This one is, and it just arrived, I mean, today. It just showed up today. And this one, I believe, is it Brilliant Yellow Pale. So it has a little bit of titanium in it, so it is very opaque. I have to say this one's really opaque, and I thought it'd be interesting, especially mixing that with things like the Van Dyke Brown, with the ivory here, and perhaps even with our indigo, do a lot of the different things on the horse. And this green could be interesting for some of our skin tone greens. I'm hoping that this ends up a little bit more like the field green that I'm used to from the Miguel oil brushers. Now I'm looking at this. Now see, it does have more linseed oil in it, and actually I was in a little bit of a meeting earlier today, and we talked about linseed oil versus safflower oil and just kind of the different properties of those things. What's the purpose behind them? We did notice that things like Terra Rosa, indigo, these type of colors, and even the Egyptian violet, they trend towards the safflower oil versus the linseed oil. So we're still trying to determine what that means, what impact that has. But in any case, this is a kind of an important one here. Now, I will just throw some of these colors out here. You've already seen the episodes on mixing some of these, and actually there are some more. There's other new colors on the way as well. They're not. They're kind of targeted. It's not just getting new colors to get new colors. It's sometimes getting the same color in a different brand to see is there a difference, which we have discovered there's a difference. Then there's colors like this, and you say, well, why you got the white here? What about that? Well, remember these from our acrylics are these slightly off whites instead of using a white. So again, it's just I'm thinking this could be an interesting, a little bit of a difference in the color possibility. Maybe it doesn't do what I expect it to or hope it will. That's always possible too. Anything is possible. I make no assurances of anything. Now this is that new, see the permanent yellow, or as we just call them, kind of the faux cadmiums. Away we go here. There. I think we'll throw a little Terra Rosa out here, maybe. You know what? Yeah, you know what? We'll go with our Fanchon red here and see if we can sort of craft a Terra Rosa, since this, and I'll have to look. Unfortunately, I don't think the tube will say does it have safflower or linseed oil, sadly. Yeah, these small, it does give you the pigment number, but it does not say. Yeah, it doesn't say if it has safflower or the other type of oil in it. I'm gonna, you know what? Maybe we don't do this won't be Payne's Gray this time around. We are gonna substitute. I'm gonna do something a little different. So that's why I wanted you to see this. That's Van Dyke Brown up there. Then you're gonna have an indigo here. And then we're gonna have ivory black over here. And then we'll do our, what is this green called again? It is called Italian Terra Verte. Now it does. There are an awful lot of these Italian. It's a thing with Williamsburg. They have a ton of these different colors, and uh, I I really wish that there would not be all of this different naming regimens. They would just kind of stay a little bit more standardized. But what can you do? We are gonna throw some brown matter out here. We will just keep it to this for right now. We'll see. Maybe we throw some more stuff out here. Maybe we don't. I don't know. We're going to move these off to the side here. We have our usual brushes and sponges. Nothing fancy there. So what we're going to get to next is we'll do our little pre-glaze here, featuring mostly, I would say, the ivory black, the Van Dyke brown, touch of the blue. Expect to see more indigo here, and in the main, expect to see more Van Dyke brown. Unfortunately, of course, there's a saddle run right across the middle, doing that really interesting part, and then probably some of the indigo on his feet here too, but then Van Dyke brown on his tail, which of course is all bound up in this thing. So we'll do what we can, do the best we can with what we've got. So what we're gonna do is get our sponges, get our brushes, and just start slapping some paint on this guy, and we'll do that next. Let's get this underway. We have some of our brushes here, and we'll just start to drop in some of our color. We're going to use our thinner, as always. Don't have to use a ton. Remember, don't have to use a lot. Now, one thing I have seen, yeah, this is a little bit of a disappointment right here, because the field green in some of the other colors that I've gotten has been really thick or really opaque, more like a Terra Rosa. So this could potentially be, I don't want to call it a failed experiment yet, but that's more like cobalt violet. So yeah, that color, like I say, you can't always win. Sometimes you just go, well, that wasn't such a great idea. We'll see what we can do with it. Maybe we mix it with this yellow here and it does something neat. But the thing I was hoping to use it for, not going to be able to use it for. I guess I'm not trying to say that to scare people. I'm trying to actually say that so that people aren't so scared, where they just go, all right, you know what? Sometimes that choice just doesn't work. And it's okay if it doesn't. Instead of, oh man, look at, I completely bought the wrong color. Well, maybe I end up finding some other use for that. It is very possible. I'm going with the brown matter in here. It's something I do a lot with the skin tones. I guess the other thing too is I try to say, well, that didn't work out, because that's it's almost more useful for you sometimes to see when things don't work than when they do, because like I said, you find out, well, all right, things can go haywire sometimes. They don't always go the way you would like them to, and it's not the end of the world. Would I have? Oh, I didn't even notice that head. There's two more heads over here. Okay, didn't notice either one of those. All right. Indigo time. And you notice how we're not actually using all that much of the liquid here? I just started to notice that as I'm wiping things away, at times it's almost a little bit better to have it be not quite so liquid. It does spatter a bit less. A plus. Definitely a plus. Now, I don't have any other figures out here, so there's really not a lot of spatter to worry about. Looking at, okay, so his front legs definitely are dark. We're going to carry this down all the way here, as we do. Maybe a little of this ivory black now. Why did I do that? Not really sure when I wipe the paint away. I'm just hoping to get some variance. Now, back to that Van Dyke. Yeah, we'll go I think maybe Van Dyke Brown here. None of this is going to be any kind of a final color. It's more the tint that I'm interested in, and you'll see when I'm going to just go in with that. I keep wanting to call it a Naples yellow. I don't think it is. I get these guys, one of the things they have a tendency to do is just kind of come up with their own names for colors. Wish that didn't really happen, but whatever. There might come a time where maybe I just get to name the colors, which will be kind of boring because they're just going to be the usual colors. There's not going to be bizarro names. It's going to be what it is. Heck, I might even just use the pigment numbers. How would that be? Wouldn't that just be thrilling for paint jars? Actually, that's kind of neat having that. That's the first time I've done that on any of these horsies here. Back to my indigo again. I mean, it could just be PR number whatever. That's it. Nothing else. That probably would drive some people nuts. Do we have some cut up sponges? We do not. I used to just cut these up individually. Now I have a tendency to just leave them because they tend to come, it's like 2 or 3 of them stuck together like this. It's almost a little bit easier to get these smaller ones. Doesn't catch on the scissors quite as much. The other thing too, and I've noticed this, if you just use the smaller ones and just kind of use the ones that you end up with maybe a little less paint all over your fingers. Now, it won't be such a issue with any of these colors, but I just noticed working on some recent things where there was a bunch of phthalo colors. Well, my fingers kind of stayed those colors for a little while, no matter how hard I scrubbed. Didn't matter. It's not like it was coming off into my food or something like that, but it was there for a while. It took a while to wear away. These aren't those type of colors. They're not staining colors. Alizarin crimson would be another one of those. Phthalo blue, phthalo green, possibly some of your other magentas and such might be that way. So I'm just gonna, instead of, look at that, I have no paint on my fingers whatsoever here. I cut up the sponges into smaller pieces. That seemed to give me more pieces. I could work with it. See, look, we got some reds, some reddish tones. Get rid of these guys, and now we'll go back. We always have some kind of a paint rag here. Just a paper towel. Could be a napkin. You got recycled paper towel. What are the really cheap, nasty recycle, almost like the restaurant recycled napkins, those cheap ones that you get? Something like that could work too. I'm just going to play with something right here just to see what happens. Yeah, this is that's just that's a weird color. I don't think that might have just been, that might be something we just don't use. I'm going to throw a little bit of this in there, see if it changes it around. So it makes a little more opaque, as you would think. And again, see how there's just minimal paint on this brush? Very minimal. We let that mix with what we've got out here. Let's go back to this yellow again. Want a little bit more in there. And we let this mix with what's out here. Remember, we can always go back in with darks as well. Once it starts to get lighter, it's not like that's your path and you're on that path and that's it. You can only go lighter from there. No, that's not quite how it works. That is not quite what we're doing. Now up here, it is kind of unfortunate that it's the one horse that has that armor on his face, because it would be really neat to be able to show off these lighter colors on his head and contrast that with his mane. So yeah, that green right there, that's going to just get put to the side for now. I have to figure out what's going on with that. Maybe I just use it directly from the tube. This is why I try to do these things either on a stream or here in a video where you can see it happen, instead of just, I found out earlier this doesn't work. You won't know why or what actually happened. We'll just tell you it doesn't work. I'd rather I'd rather give you more information than that. We'll go even lighter into his face here. So this brighter yellow seems to be okay. And you can tell it doesn't really look like yellow on screen. I wanted something that wasn't so obviously cadmium yellow. It's sort of a lemon yellow. I thought there could be some circumstances where it's got some usefulness. But yeah, the field green, that one was a little bit of a disappointment there. So I'm gonna, and that's the Italian. Maybe they're just meant to be more translucent or something like that. It did not read as that when I was looking at this. It didn't register as a transparent, but well, I'm always doing more research, so we're just going to find some lights on this blade here. We're gonna mix that with a touch of our brown matter here. Make sure we're pretty well centered. And we'll try and take advantage of the pre-glazing on his skin colors here. Looks like he's got some kind of bracers on here. Just hit these faces here too. Looks like this one has its eyes closed. These guys just look a little bit concerned over here, I suppose because they're just ahead on a horse. Now, time for a little bit of our yellow ochre. Let's do some stuff on these. I'm just going to assume they're leathers. Maybe even give these guys some lighter hair because, well, they probably would have a slightly different hair color. See what happens when that combines with the yellow ochre. And we'll do our glaze thing on this too. So yeah, see that does. It has the kind of impact I was hoping. Yeah, all right. So at first I wasn't sure. Like, well, that should be a relatively opaque white there. And at first it was kind of a little strange, but then now it seems to be acting more like what it should. We're going to give this a touch of our indigo here. Got some white in that so that it has a little more of a bluish look, which we will impart into the sword here. And all this it's as much we're just kind of exploring where things go. This is where we're going to maybe take ourselves a different brush here. Indigo. Touch of that black. And it's just like when we were adding the lighter colors. Why would we add a ton of paint here with the darker colors? We're going to practically dry brush these darker colors on too. The same idea is going to apply here. Front legs, had thought about these being a little darker. We'll make this happen here. Maybe a touch more of the ivory black. And this is the Gamlin ivory black. This is not your Winsor Newton starter set ivory black. It's been a little bit harder to notice any significant difference between that one and, say, the starter set ivory black. It was the faux cadmiums, easier to spot those, and it was more the working time, the longevity of them than, so I always say, any perceptible difference in just the color itself, where it was brighter or less bright or more opaque, less opaque. The difference really was in just how it acted on the palette after being on the palette for a while. That was the biggest thing. Working our way back in here with some of these darker tones. But I can still let it mix with some of the lighter stuff that we put in. We will, like I said, we're still going to do our glazing. Here, this is, in some ways, it's really reminiscent of the shaded base coat, because we're kind of working from that middle to the lighter tones and then sort of glazing. Just because it's not, just because it's oils and not acrylics, it doesn't mean that some of that same idea doesn't necessarily apply. So that's the indigo. I might throw a little bit of cerulean, or perhaps some of the, maybe an ultramarine, some kind of a different type of blue there. So that's the one thing I might throw out here that's not already out here. You know what? I'm kind of actually going to go back to the yellow over here. And remember, even if there's brush strokes there, well, yeah, that paint's not going to dry for a while. So I could go back in there and do some scumbling, blending after the fact, not a problem. So the back legs here, I'm actually seeing that being a little lighter here. It's almost like there's a sock, the classic horse sock there. And as always, the oils just make it really easy to get down in there and do some blending. This is where we do some blind blending here. I really can't see what the heck's going on there. All I know is that I am getting some blending. I don't want this to be super light, but it was just kind of there was just too much dark right there. I wanted some form of light, because he is rearing up on his hind legs, whereas horse in the picture, not doing that. Gonna make this a little lighter. Also thinking about potentially using a sponge or a stipple brush. And that was the other reason when I saw these, I thought, could be interesting to do something like that too. Let's see, yeah, I can, even now, I can still blend this out, not a problem. We'll make those eyes darker as well. We'll go back in. Now let's find ourselves some, and we know see, this is what I thought that I had with the Fanchon red here with the green. So I thought that I had Sorry for that noise there. I thought I had the speaker turned off, but apparently not. So, ochre again. A touch of the brown matter with that. So this will be as much a color contrast with the gray of the horse as anything else. Maybe even let some of this get on here as a skin tone. That was actually another place where I thought that green could be useful as something to mix with the skin tone, but again, I thought its consistency was going to be more like this fanchon red, and it is so not that. So sometimes that the best laid plans just don't quite work out the way they're supposed to. I'm not really going to get too involved in this particular thing because we're going to be doing the horses stuff over top of that. Same thing here. Maybe even here. I'm going to just sneak in some red there. I would like to get some yellow in a few places. That's our cadmium yellow deep. It's not like I necessarily want rings to be gold or anything like that. I don't know. Maybe they're bronze or copper. I'm just going to get something on these guys because I think color-wise, it'll give me a good indication what's going on there. So we'll just get some of our brown onto his hair. Obviously a chieftain or leader type figure here of some kind. Now, if I'm thinking about a green, if I don't have green out on the palette, we could potentially take our... Actually, I could mix that with the ivory black too, and that would make an interesting green. Now, look at this interesting kind of a yellowish green here. I might even throw a little touch more indigo into that. Remember, we're just thinking about getting some of this into the skin tones. And with the oils, it's that much more essential that you are working on the whole figure all at once. None of this, well, we're just going to work on one little part. You want to work drier. You want to be thinking less paint, always less paint. Less is more, and more is a whole lot less. Constantly think about ways to just do more with less paint. It really does make a huge difference. It really does. Now, I'm going to try and get a few more like really lights in here. So I'm going to actually just use I got tons of brushes here. That's the whole reason why I'm going to take some of the yellow, some of the white, because if we want to glaze over this, well, we need to have something really light to work with. I'm just going to put some of this on. There's a little bit of this on our guy here. Let's really get that paint into the brush. Whatever that is, I'm not real sure. It seems like, yeah, that's some kind of strappings over some kind of cloth, I'm going to assume. So we'll lighten this up. Let some of that blue stay behind. Again, oh, yeah, see, here's an area that needs some attention there. No lighter colors got onto that whatsoever. So what we're going to do is use this as our starting point. We'll go in, we will do some glazing here and there, and then we'll go back to this. I think that's the next, after the glazing and some other things, bringing out this metal and some other stuff. We'll see what happens with some stippling effects on our horse, and basically, something like this. And what I'm already seeing on there, boy, I might just save that as the stippling brush. I mean, there's not making any kind of a color impression here, but could be interesting. So I'm gonna keep it like that. So what we'll do is we'll come back in again. Like I said, get some of these darks in here now, maybe, and just work on this blade, see what other kind of things we can do with this hair. Probably go in with smaller brushes, add even more lights here at the same time. So we're gonna do that next. Let's go with a couple of lighter colors in here. Few places. This. Just hit a couple of these areas. Before I do the darker glaze on there, I thought, let's do something here with these. And again, it doesn't take much paint. It's not a lot of paint. And it's obviously it's going to get dirty. You have to go back in here. You have to get fresh paint. I'm even going to try and get some lighter stuff in here. Just a little bit easier. Sometimes smaller brush just going to be easier. Now let's see what happens up here. Because of the shape of this, whenever you have these curved blades like this, it can be a little wacky trying to figure out exactly what you want to do there. So I could go dark, light, dark, dark, light, dark. Let's see if that works. Okay, so then if that's going to be darker, this has to be lighter here. And we'll see if that works. The only way to know is to give it a shot. If it doesn't work, it takes a few seconds to wipe it off and change it back again. So I'm not super worried about that. There's also the some kind of color contrast that might go in there as well. All right, I think we've gotten as much of the... What is that? Is that some more armband things on them? Okay, it looks like there's some kind of armband things on him there. Some stuff on the face. Okay. Now let's start to think about some darker glazing here. Okay. Let's just think about him, and we'll get some of our brown matter here. We'll mix it with some of our ivory black, a nice deep brown here. We could be using our burnt umber too. I was trying to maybe go with the more of a minimal type of a palette. We need actually some more of our liquid into this because we want it to flow. We don't want to be brushing it on there. Look at how that just sinks down into all those little crevices. All I can do though is just touch it here. And the idea is see how it kind of flows down his hair. Go back here, get some more. This is what I mean, where we make things sort of intentionally lighter and then go boom. With the darker glazes a little bit later, it's not quite the same as we would do maybe with the acrylics. I suppose it's a neat way to just kind of find your way through some of the color and the color scheme and see what it is you want to do, because it's so easy to make those changes. It's not like it's that hard to do with the acrylics either, but with the oils, so easy to just swipe it away and be done with it. I just want to see this. This will probably get painted over again, but I wanted to see it here to get just a real sense of how light or dark the gray on the fur is. Now, this is going to be more of a brown matter. That's going to sit right in here again. It's a little bit of negative painting because we're not hitting this. We're just hitting this part over here. And now I can actually make a little bit of a distinction maybe between, I suppose, his pants and those strappings here. I really do love the way that glaze just goes right down into the crevices where I want it to go. I'll see how much of this will work on the other, this other leg over here. I see a nice big old spot over here. I think we might just do a bit of indigo on this as well. Maybe even let that mix with my brown matter just a touch. See, there's a, I don't even know if you can see that. There's just a little bit of his pant sort of sticking through that. Now, what are we going to do on his face? We'll get some of our nice dark red mix here. We'll do a bit of a pin line wash here. Might even do more of an indigo blue and black. So a nice deep dark bluish black here for his hair. This side too, and down the end of this ponytail here. These things are a little tough because of the way the mold lines sort of run through them, so it's going to be, that's a challenge on some of these. There will be, shall we say, mold line challenges, and that when you try to eliminate those, now we got our, it's interesting, this brush keeps getting pointier and sharper the more I use it. I would get more, but they just don't have more right now. So you know what? I'm not going to make that darker value as I'm just going to give it a different color maybe. So we wanted this to have more dark in it. What's going on this side? And we've got our, yeah, I'm just gonna reverse course here. Yeah, if I see too much paint on there, I'm just gonna, I could use a paper towel or whatever, take that off of there. I'm also thinking at this point, I'm gonna find, let's just take some kind of a, maybe one that's in the, let's use this phthalo blue. Crazy as this sounds, we don't need much of it here. I mean, it just takes a, I mean, that's actually a bazillion times too much. I don't even need that much. Should make a bit of a difference here when, oh yeah, look at that. That's the intensity of that phthalo blue, but now it is a bit of a sky color here. And see, now it's not just darker, it has a color. Pretty much until now, everything, okay, yeah, it might have been darker, but it had no color whatsoever to it. That's not going to do it. And then, oh look, we can do our little fading exercise there. So that's all it took. It was as simple as just, all right, we needed a little different color out here. Now I'm going to get this into some other areas too. Going to try and get it into his hair, any spare piece of armor-ish type of stuff. So like here, and it gives it a little bit of bluishness. Now it's going to separate it from that. Even more so because we have the, I want to keep wanting to call it cadmium yellow light, but some of that new permanent yellow light or whatever that is. I'll have to look up the name. Like I said, I've only had it for a matter of hours, so it's not exactly fresh on my mind what color that is. I do want something that's got more earth tone to it. This also should make a difference. Let that combine. Let's do another bit of glazing over here on the eyes. Indigo, bit of our, so indigo ivory black combination, the Gamlin ivory black, the Windsor Newton indigo, possibly even into some of the areas of the mane here. And if it's not fluent, I would need more, but I wanted a little bit less of it for right in here. It just, things were getting a little bit confusing right there. Easier to deal with that now. Touch of our darker tones in there. I might a little that sneak up here on this blade. There also is a little bit of a a divot or a cut mark in the blade right there. Any brush can be a blending brush. Yay, look at that. Just blended that away. This is going to involve, I think it's going to be almost more of a Van Dyke Brown time. Let's go back to, we haven't done that since the initial phases here. And we'll let some of that get into this lighter color here we put there. And once again, it just, all it can be, touch the brush there. That's as much as I can do. Anything more than that is just going to wipe it away. That just became a little dark. That's it. See, look at this. I've already added a second glaze in some parts here. Yeah, actually added a second glaze in some parts. Now, why don't we just give this guy maybe even some redder here? So that we took the Fanchon red. Oh yeah, because he's got the beard. Let's do that. He's got the, give him red beard and all this kind of other stuff here. Just making some changes, making some additions. It's fine to go ahead and do that now. We are going to go over here with a bit of our bluish. Again, that's the cobalt, not cobalt blue, phthalo blue, sorry. Some of that white here. Now, maybe those are supposed to be more of a leather. I don't know, but we'll try them out as a metal. See what happens just as a metal. Now, let's see if we can't. So we've got some of that. Again, that's the lighter. It's basically a titanium almost. Yeah, this brush here. Now, this is another thing that I've noticed with these Dick Blick right here. The more you use them, the better they get. When they're right out of the package, sometimes they're just kind of eh. But the more used they are, the more broken in they are. They're really, there's a noticeable change, and they actually get better. The tip gets sharper because it's significantly different now using it than the first few times that I used it. It's kind of weird. Don't ask me to explain exactly why that happens. It has, I've noticed with other brushes before, kind of the more they get worked, they sort of get broken in and they just get that much better. And other brushes are the opposite. They are much better when they are brand spanking new and have not kind of been abused a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of that's our yellow, that new yellow, whitish yellow, and some of the ochre here. And I'm just looking to get, yeah, see a bit of more of a deserty type color here. Don't want to get too much lighter on skin tones, but I do see there's this touch of fur lining here or something, and I don't know, kind of forgetting about that. So I'm just going to throw this here so I don't keep forgetting about that. And yes, I know we're doing all this other stuff, and we really haven't done too much on the horse in a while. That'll be that next segment. I just wanted to get some stuff going here before we get too invested in making big old changes to the skin on that horse. So, I mean, here's something where I just had a whole bunch of brushstrokes go wrong, right? The heck with it. I'll do that because I'm looking at that tail and it really shouldn't necessarily be quite so dark. Remember, we wanted to have some reddishness to it. So here's some of that Van Dyke brown and brown matter. That's more like it. Just changing that color around a little bit. So sometimes just, like I said, I had a paint color go wrong. A couple of things just didn't go the way I would have liked them to. That is not the end of the world. It's not even a big deal. It's whatever. You know what? I will take the opportunity, maybe. Once again, another little bit of a panel line glaze along here. Best to do this now rather than have to do that later, and then we are back at it with these things. Is bridle here. Best to just do this now, and there will be probably areas where it gets a little bit covered up, but it's not like we've painted any real values on there. So we've got our indigo again. Do I want to get, nope. This up here, I just have to kind of leave that now. We've done quite a bit on that blade, so that's why we want to move to the horse. Remember, we kind of move from one area to the next. And I just am not super sure about those things actually being metal. Yeah, we're gonna change that. We are changing that again, which may change again. Totally reserve the right to do that. This is another thing I thought could be interesting, is to see what sort of a skin tone does that make if we mix that with Terra Rosa. What does that do for it? What kind of skin tones do we get with that? And even this is, I mean, it's almost a glaze. I mean, it's not meant to be, but it just kind of is. It's that thin. It is seriously that thin. Now, I don't want these to get too much of a flesh color to them. I do think we want him to have the darker, ruddier skin. Now, there are some parts over here that just didn't get anything. Looking along here. And kind of one of the last things we'll do over here is we will take our Van Dyke brown. Just pop this thing right here. The saddle cinch with no buckle on it. Who'd have thought I'd be complaining there were no buckles? Then we'll throw a little bit of our darker Van Dyke brown and his beard here. This guy has a beard too. However, maybe we'll. I don't know if I want that here necessarily to be lighter. All right. So we have this. That's a nice little introductory thing. We've been working on this thing less than an hour, and I mean, there's some people that would just be delirious if they could crank up 10 guys like this in a day. So again, all this stuff is set up. We can push all this stuff around. We could wipe it all away if we did not like it. I see one last, and this is actually one of the first things I meant to do. Just didn't quite get to it, but now we got to it, and that is that. So next up is going to be our horse. We might use this as a stipple brush. We're going to use something, and we're going to see what happens with maybe stippling some of that dot texture on there and see what happens, and we'll do that next. Well, let's see what we can do with some of that stippling and some other stuff. Now, first things first, however, so blending brush here. This color we intentionally haven't messed with in a while, because the idea is we're gonna, look at how much paint's coming off of here. But now this is where we're starting to soften some of the brush strokes or texture. I mean, like right here, you can see there's a big old blob right there, right, with a strong edge on it, and yeah, all gone. That's not around anymore. We have some over here too, same thing. We'll just brush away some of this excess texture. I don't mind this getting darker here. That's some of the original pre-glaze that is in the brush now. See, I don't even mind some of that working its way into the brush. And I suppose don't also, I get too obsessed with everything's got to be smooth. I mean, it's nice with the oils. It sure as heck makes it easier, but also don't want you to feel like you're just completely obligated to be doing that. And now, see what we can do if we like these broader. we'll see. I'm gonna just give this a shot. If there wasn't all this stuff over here, if it was just a horse by itself, no rider or saddles or anything like that, it might work better. Let's just give it a shot here. We're going to start off with some darker stuff. I'm going to take some Van Dyke Brown here, indigo. And what I'm hoping to do is maybe work this a little bit each way. But I can only do that so many times. I got to go back and I've got to get some fresh stuff because it's picking up the lighter paint. Now, that's not necessarily a horrible thing because it also does fade. It fades it to a certain degree to where I don't necessarily have to then take a brush and brush it back over. And the other thing too is I could maybe do this as a general texture, then go back in with a finer brush of some type and then really target certain lighter dots, certain darker dots. See, I'm seeing his elbow here getting really dark. But you can see how that's picking up the lighter paint. So I'm going to go back over here, get some more. I don't want to also to get too indigo blue, but I like the fact that there is some difference. I can see some where I go over here and even get a little bit of that matter and some of the not ivory black, some of the Van Dyke brown. It does go down further on the chest than I thought, so we'll let some of that go. So you can, hopefully you can see what's happening there. We're getting some, what I'm hoping is kind of a soft texture here. What I didn't really want to have to do was just draw a whole bunch of little dots, like one at a time by hand, and then sort of have to just kind of wait a while and then go and just sort of wipe them away or fade those out. I thought, well, that there's nothing wrong with that, but I just wanted to see, could I do that in a slightly different way here, like this. I think it's working out somewhat the way I had hoped. I had sort of hoped that that green would be able to do some things for me, and that's just not going to work. That's definitely not one of the more, well, I don't know. I can't say it's not one of the positive results of the experiments here because I know that for what I was thinking, not going to work. Maybe for something else, it could work just fine. Now, I put the dark there, but didn't concern myself with trying to paint anything on the bridle there. And I think you can see what happens. I'm stippling this, which is, it's blending it to a degree, not a lot, just to a degree. Now, I'm not quite sure how much darker I necessarily want this to go. This is where I might come back in with some of the lighter stuff here. Now this is more of a brownish look. So over here, it's a little more of the indigo. Here, more of the brown. And as much as I would love the randomness of the brush stipple, I'm going to see what happens when I just use, okay, there's our crazy yellow color here. Well, look at what I've got. I'm going to go, let's mix it with the ivory black, and I'm hoping to get sort of a warm-ish gray. And I have no idea what's going to happen here. We are going to find out. And we're going to try and stipple this here, much like what we did with the other brush, but I'm just trying to get less of the lighter dots here. And I might just, yeah, I think I needed less paint. That's it. Well, I gotta listen to myself. Always talking about less paint on the brush. Somehow just, I got a little bit fooled because I was trying to have the bristles splayed out a little bit. And what I thought was splayed bristles was actually just bristles that were loaded with too much paint. So it can happen. Sometimes, just like with when you're trying to do the thick over thin, and sometimes you get a little bit fooled by what's going on with the paint. You look at it and you say, oh yeah, that's thin paint there. And then you thin down the paint on the brush. You got to put it on there. And then you find out, oh, well, yeah, maybe not as thin as I was thinking it was. Carry some of these lighter spots down here. And you can see how much paint it's picking up. And in the color we started with here, it's not like this is some kind of white. By no means is this a white. We could go a whole bunch lighter than this. But what I was hoping to do was have just kind of the general mid-tone of the horse laid out here. And then kind of have this lighter stuff over the top of it. To it almost is a bit like where we have some transparent layers built on top of each other. Almost like, geez, almost like we maybe tried to glaze it or something. But not a glaze. So here I'm trying to make this lighter again, but with a stipple approach. Now here I was counting, and I think that's going to work. I was counting on this to be lighter here with these spots, if anything else, just to create a bit of contrast from the saddle, leather, blanket, whatever it is. And I'm just looking at the. Okay, so there's some. I want some lighter colors working their way down his leg here. So yeah, this whole segment here, what we're really interested in is that horse, to see how we can do this texture here. Now, when I did the painting pyramid, different horse breeds, I didn't want any kind of a rider or saddle or anything like that. So basically, I just had to get some reaper bones, unicorns, cut off the horn, and other weird things that were on them, just so that I would have a horse that didn't have saddles and riders and that other kind of stuff. Because everything else was obviously cavalry with a horse, rider, saddle, all that sort of stuff. Again, now here, that's going to be lighter, so I want that to actually be darker. And I'm trying to get my lighter spots back over here, somewhat as a contrast to that, well, whatever that is. And I will let some lighter spots work their way down on this leg here. And remember, we had sort of the socks on this thing, so we'll bring these back a little bit. As I said, we can always make that lighter. I think we're starting to get just, well, there's less and less paint on the brush kind of by default as we stipple away here. And this is almost as much about blending those together as it is about putting a lighter color on there. So I think you can see what's happening there. And should none of this work and I just kind of be disgusted with it, say whatever, I can just take that blending brush and in 2 seconds this would be, and instead of being a dapple gray, it would just be a lighter gray horse, and it would still have all of its shading. It would take a couple seconds just to wipe all this stuff out, and it would just look like it was shaded again. It's all about the flexibility. To me, the oils just offer more of that flexibility, the ability to just kind of change right there on the fly. You say, yeah, not feeling that. And you just make that change, less afraid to make that change. Because there's times maybe where you just need to, but you just can't convince yourself to. And then I'm also trying to learn the properties of this new yellow right here. Exactly how much is it like? Is it just like titanium white with a little bit of yellow in it? Or is it something very different? Now, if I want to have any lighter spots kind of stand out here, what I'd have to do is go with a thinner paint that also has a little more liquid in it. So we will thin this down, and it should be interesting to see what sticks here. Oh, look at, yeah. I'm just looking to have some dominant spots here now. Because we've kind of texturized it. Maybe now it's time for some dominant spots here to really make it look like, okay, they're supposed to have spots, not just, is he made out of sandpaper or something? And his face should be lighter. Now I'm going to thin this down with the notion that it should be sticking. And it sure as heck does. Because I want this gray to have differences than obviously the gray on his little bit of armor up here. They're that close. Need to have some differences in that color. I don't. Maybe I will get just a little touch of my titanium white in there. Because that yellow, that's not the lightest color that I can do. I can certainly do lighter colors. Wow, see how much lighter we can go there on a few spots. And I do mean a few, not a lot, just a few. And there's a temptation to go right into here now and just kind of start smoothing some of these out, blending some of these out. I got to resist that. See, now that we're getting a little more structured with those spots. So everything that was going on before was a bit of a stipple. I mean, we could have potentially even done that with maybe a bit of a sponge. I wanted to see that happen with the brush, though, with the stippling action there. So how much lighter? Yeah, let's hit the once again his sock over here. See how much lighter that can go. Sometimes, and then there's the other thing too. That if it just doesn't accept any paint at all, you say, all right, you know what? We'll leave this alone for half an hour, for an hour. It won't be dry, but it should be able to take some more paint. That'll be the difference. We'll work our way around here. Again, this is thin down, not runny thin down. It's thinner, and you can also see too. Look what's happening here. Trying to position this inside. See some of these larger kind of grayish dots here. Got a couple of areas yet to go on this guy. Maybe we'll lighten up the ears. Now here, well, didn't really hit this before, so we'll get some texture on this. And even take away some of that excess. And so we're doing a little bit of a scumbling action there to get some blend on it. And how effective that can be. We can do that here. See how those dots, they just a little bit more smeared out, almost like they are now. They're just hair. You see the direction of the hair moving around. I mean, it is fur after all. It's not just dots. I don't know how much lighter I would want his chest to be here. I will try to get some spots here. And if the lighter ones don't really make an impact, I can go the other way. We'll go with darker spots. Okay. Because I can see, and especially here, since he is kind of reared up on his back legs, maybe we can see some lighter spots down here. I think it'll make almost a little bit more sense then, instead of just, well, why does he only have spots on his upper half? And why are there no spots anywhere else? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, I think the next thing we'll move on to is some of the thing, like the heads here, some of the stuff that's on the horse itself. Now, actually, we'll go back to the skin on him because now that I think about it, that's an area that I think we haven't worked on as much, or less recently. I guess that's really the term I'm looking for. It's been less a longer time ago since we last messed around with the skin. Now, what do I see? So let's just looking at his muzzle here. There's not really a lot more room for darker colors. I am going to get, I think we'll throw just a bit of our ochre into some parts of this. We need to get a little bit of, not necessarily say reflected light, but maybe even it's dust. I mean, yeah, just like you would do a vehicle, right? Picking up the dust. Well, I mean, he is running around basically in the dirt. Maybe picks up some of that. And now it's a nice little change away from all of the blues and grays. And it's super subtle. Not really going to even notice that at all. I am going to hit this. That's actually, it's kind of like we did make a Terra Rosa there. And that was the Fanchon red with the ivory black. So it kind of made, oh, I could actually look at the pigment numbers of the Terra Rosa and see, now how close are those numbers there. I don't want to get kind of held hostage by pigment numbers and that sort of thing, because if I do, yeah, I just don't want to do that. I don't want to be using numbering systems or anything like that, because since there's a lot of people that use different numbering systems, that could kind of fall apart in a hurry. Yes, I'm just going to treat that as kind of a part of the horse there. You can see now the color contrast between that. If I just were to kill the black and make that everything black and white, you just wouldn't see the difference between those two. But now color-wise, a difference. I'm going to scumble some of that together. Maybe even get a little of this reddish brown. Sneak some of it into his tail. And I mean just a little bit. And you can see just how dry we are working here with this ochre. It's pretty dry. There's not much of it there. For a good reason. I'm looking here. Again, I have to avoid the temptation to kind of go in there and try and do blendy stuff. I don't want to do that. I have to wait. But what I can do in the meantime is bring in some more darks here on the horses in his nostrils here. Maybe even a few darker spots. So that means taking some of the Van Dyke brown. I think I've got to thin it to make it stick here. Oh, yes. Oh, that sticks all right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that really did the trick there. And I just wanted to get some more. Oh, that's not part of his mane. I'm thinking that's a weird. Why does his mane have an ear on it? And then yeah, I see the. Eventually, I'll figure that out. Back to this, and hopefully that's still thin enough that it's going to cover. But I don't want to get that too dark. This has to be lighter, and I'm going to just do that right now before I forget, which means we're just going to do something there with some ochre. So you can see it's lighter, but a different color as well. I mean, a whole different kind of a shade, tone, whatever you want to call it. I'll let that blend a little bit there. So yeah, it's another little bit of contrast. Value-wise, it's not like it's that much lighter. Color-wise, massive difference. My my artificially constructed Terra Rosa over here. That's almost sacrilege right there. Now we have to just leave him alone. As much as I like to keep dabbing away at that horse, have to stop. We do have to. We'll work on his skin. So we'll get just completely away from the horse altogether, and we'll work on this guy. We've got all of these little doodads and everything, not just the skin, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's what we are going to work on next. Let's do a little bit of work here on our horsemen, and we kind of need to go two ways on this. We need to go a little bit lighter. We need to go a little bit darker. First off, I'm going to see about, let's give him some eyes here. And I'm going to throw some lighter colors here. I'm just not quite sure. See, I see there's more fur over here or whatever that is. Then there's actually some of these little chain type things on him here. I'm going to grab the synthetic because there's some odd angles that I'm going to have to approach this with here. And really, I just got to kind of stick the brush down in here. So easier to do with that synthetic for sure. And we're going to get, I think there is definitely some teeth on the bottom of that as well. I guess we've gotten as I didn't think we had gotten quite that light there. That's good. Now here, see how again the values aren't necessarily very different right there. They're probably exactly the same. However, one side has that earth color, the other side has the sky color. So makes that interesting difference between the two. Let's go into our brown matter here. Let's see what we've got. Let's see how much lighter this actually is. I see. He also has earrings. I did not notice those before. So yeah, we've got these. I keep thinking there's skin here, but there's really not skin there. I'm also thinning this down. I am kind of going with more of a pinkish color here on his hands for the time being. And there was a mold line that ran through these as well. So we do the best that we can. But that's how it goes with the price that these things are and the relative indestructibility of the figures too. It's a trade that, well, okay, they cost less. They're not, I don't want to say indestructible. I mean, you can break them, but compared to, say, delicate resin or plastic, or you drop a metal figure on the ground, well, I think you already know what the result's going to be there. So we've added some of our lighters. Then I'm going to go back in with some darks too, especially around the eyes. Not that this is a very light color. This is really just a mid-tone here. It's not like we have gone crazy. Look at how much lighter that seems right there. It's more just how dark everything else is. That just tells me on his face I want to establish some more darks. I want to get rid of some of that, and then we'll just kind of scumble this together here. It's another form of blending. It doesn't always have to be just we put a layer on top of another layer and we so-called blend them. There's also just place it and push it around. And you can do that little bit of scumbly stuff as well. Gonna go in here, indigo, Van Dyke Brown. I need to see, do I need to get lighter with some aspects of this? The lighter, not real super excited with going lighter. That means we got to go the opposite direction. We're taking our indigo, we're taking our black, we make it darker. And we may be adding a whole bunch of, we're going to be adding a lot of darker colors in there. This is not a panel line wash or a pin glaze. We're actually just painting thin down, but not so thin that it is watery. It's thin enough to make it stick, to make it flow. I cannot emphasize that enough. There's a difference between thinning and thinning. I know that's going to sound kind of weird. But yeah, all of a sudden now we've got ourselves some nice little texture happening here. I gotta do this around his eyes especially. And that is going to really make that area stand out because there's just not much there. It's one of the most important parts of the entire, as far as the rider goes, the face, and we didn't really have much happening there. It was just kind of blah. We'll bring in some additional darks here before we go back in with some lights. I don't want to focus too much on the rider. I was really hoping to emphasize the horse itself. But while we're doing this, I'm just chucking some darker things on our little sad dudes over here. They kind of needed some darks too. And then I've got to figure out what is happening with these things. I'm just going to make that a bit darker as well. We've got these. Yeah, like the hair and some of these things, not really going to mess with that so much. Maybe this gets it a touch darker. I don't know. Just looking for some separation here in places. See, that it doesn't know what it wants to be. Does it want to be lighter, darker, warmer, cooler? We have no reflected light on there. That is something that I've got to figure out. And again, I'm tempted to go with some kind of a cooler color. What I am going to do is just try and wipe some of this away. I want it gone. There's just a lot of paint on there. If I take it away, it's going to be easier to get back at that. So that is one thing that I do notice about that new that new yellowish color, that yellow white. It's a little bit different than titanium white. I thought it was just going to be sort of cadmium yellow with the titanium mixed in there already, and it's not quite that. I'm also going to switch over now to the synthetic here. See if I can't get some lighter stuff here on his mustache, his crazy braided beard. His hair. I'm going to try and do something with his armband here. Now I'm taking a different, see that's a much warmer, even though it's a white mixed with yellow, it's a whole lot warmer. And right now I'm just having more success with the synthetic brush. Kind of, I can't really say why. I think it's because the texture is kind of rough. It's a little bit on the rough side. And I think the sable brushes tend to like that smoother, open texture. These kind of brushes can pretty much just handle anything. I've got one of these little roundel things there to take care of. We got his earring to take care of. I'm going to just try and even scum a little bit. See, that is the one thing now. Doesn't necessarily like that particular paint motion, whereas the sable brush was fine with that. Get him a cheekbone here. Now this has a bit of this is that crazy green that I tried using early on. And that's going into his cheekbone and beard. You know what, I might even throw, what the heck, we'll go even more towards a grayish green. Yeah, that whole color just kind of disappeared right there. I mean, there's just nothing. Put that little pile out there and it's like it's gone. It just disappeared. It's really strange. That is, I thought that was going to be just like indigo was the blue version of Terra Rosa, and the Egyptian violet was sort of the indigo slash phthalo or terra rosa version of purple, and I thought I just found myself the green version of that, and I did not, unfortunately. Back to some of our dark shit. Let's get the underside of his eye. And then we've just try and give him some pupils here. I got the indigo. I think we're gonna thin that down. See if we can't give him some eyes here. Okay. We'll find ourselves a few darks on our blade here. Back to our... No, that's going to be kind of a green. We don't want a green. I'm looking for that. So just see kind of a more of that brownish yellow, like it is reflecting maybe the ground. And then to maybe... I still don't even know if I want these to be metal, actually. His little gauntlet things here. I'm not so sure I want those to be metal. The more I look at it, not quite so sure. Let's get his ear a little more cleaned up there. Now, gonna get some of the faux cadmium yellow deep and our fanchon red and, well, sort of that cadmium orange that we've used. Sort of a brighter orange there. I'll throw in just a couple of spots here on these, whatever these are. Just a couple of dots. Just to make those different. And while I've got it, what the heck? Pop some over here too. And that's almost, I don't know, like a little bit of a diamond shape there. That's actually supposed to be, I'm going to mark this while I see it here. That is not actually metal there. That's part of a leather strap actually that goes over the top of this. Yeah, mold line ran through there. When I filed that away, I kind of lost that particular little detail. And, oh, I see I'm going to see if I can't get a couple of lighter colors now on his hair with using this brush. Because we went in and we really hit that with some darker stuff. I'll see what I can do with this now. Mostly at the just apex here of this ponytail, right in these couple of spots here. And see, it's not really sticking, so I'm going to try and make it actually thicker, like physically thicker paint. And sure enough, wow. I kept thinking, yeah, it's a small area, so it's a fine detail. I just gotta make it thinner. I made it thinner, and the darn thing wasn't gonna stick. I could have tried for the next half hour to get paint to stick to that. It was not going to. Well, at least not until I made it thicker. So when you're getting a little frustrated and the paint's not sticking, a couple of things you can do. Just physically make the paint thicker or thinner, or you just kind of leave that area, move on to another area for a little bit. Because our next segment that we're going to do here is we're going to go back to the horse and we're going to try and brush away or kind of smooth some of the texture. We'll try and do some I don't know, something in his mane and his tail. Get some more color / detail in there as well. Now that's just a little bit of your phthalo blue mixed with the white. And I'm looking to get two things, a bit of a color difference and even a lighter tone here. Now I might have to, because I've got a lot of thinner colors there, I just made this actually much thicker. Going to go again with a thicker application right there. Sure enough, it sticks. If I had thinned that down, as I kept wanting to, wasn't going to work. So we did that. We'll grab some kind of smaller brush for some blending here. And just gonna pull away at that edge. And we're going to do the same over here. This is how we avoid having a whole bunch of layers of paint. See that? And there was already layers there we could work with. Let's work with what's there. We're getting ourselves a real nice kind of blue versus yellow thing happening there. I mean, that's simplifying it a great deal, but in effect, that's what we got. Now I'm going to see if I can't introduce a couple of lighter colors here just on a few pronounced surfaces. Forehead. I think we've got the hands pretty well taken care of. Just going to get some lights over here on his heads. Touch of highlights on his hair. And maybe not necessarily gray. Maybe that's got almost a little bit of brownishness to it. I know it's a little bit hidden by the sword there. Just a couple. Now the crazy as this sounds, I'm actually gonna get some lighter pink stuff going on here in the face. Nose. Right here and up part of that cheekbone. A little bit right here on that temple, and then trying to split the difference there. So see, now he's got an eyelid and an eyebrow. That was just one brushstroke did that. A whole bunch of brushstrokes in there, that's going to lead to some problems. Couple of lighter things here. Again, the emphasis on the horse. I want to be able to get back to the horse there. I'm just going to hit these three things with the light because I want to see how they look compared to that. Just while I'm doing this here, I can kind of see how do they compare to those. Do I need to get some more darks on his, whatever those little discs are? And just trying to utilize this. Oh, another face over here. Yeah, I thought I was forgetting something. Now it is pretty much in shadow. I'm going to let a lot of the darker colors that are there already mix in. I will see if I can maybe get some eyes on him and some lighter tones on him at 12. We'll let him have some eyes. Let's get some lighter greens here for those leggings. So we're actually going to go really nuts here. This is going to be an interesting little greenish tone. So see what I mean? Look at, I'm kind of already getting this tone. I didn't really need to, again, the green was, it was a whole different purpose for it, and it's not going to serve the purpose that I thought it would. So live and learn, and I'm just going to stick with the colors that I got and just do my mixing. It can't hurt to just mix here. Letting a little bit more of my lights work their way into these wrappings. I'm going to go back here for some more of that green, which means cadmium coming back there. Ooh, maybe even a little bit of the yellow ochre. So it's not just lighter. There's a different color to it. All right. Gonna get back into even more of this for whatever reason. Some green down here. Not quite sure why, but it's a little different than the horse. It's also different than all the other browns and such that we've done on here. Back into this little bit of cadmium here. Well, faux cadmium, sorry. So that part of it, see, that kind of sets the rest of that down a bit. I'll get a little of this yellow into his hair because we could use some lights over here, and we got some of that orange that we used in other places. We'll hit it now. It's also, again, it's going to give us a little bit of a contrast there for our horse. After just throwing on a couple more highlights onto his beard and his hair, we're going to move back to our horse. We're going to see what we can do to smooth out some of these brush strokes now that they've been there for a while, a good 35-ish minutes or so. They've been there a little while. We are going to go in there, try and smooth those out, and then see what other kind of final details we can do on our horse. And we're going to do that next. So our horse has had some time to, I don't know, what would you say? Just it's the proving drawer, right? Let that paint sit there for a while. Hopefully it is a little bit more stable, which means we can take something soft like this maybe, and we just do a little bit of blending here. And you can see it now. And I have to remember, take that paint away. Heck, I might even need another brush too, just to have that there. But see how it's starting to, it pulls it together. It starts to look more like hair and a little less like just a bunch of dots. And I can still go over this once again and try and put in some really strong spots if I really want those. But first things first here, I just want to do a little bit of this smoothing. So you got these guys over here. So I'm just going to take that one. It's not like I'm wiping these out. They're still there. A little less pronounced, a little less of a hard edge, and they also have a bit of a pull to them. So now they look more like fur and less just like dots stuck on there. It evens out, levels out the texture a bit. See, there's not quite so much of the shininess and unevenness. Now what we're going to do on the face here is let's see what we can do with this little armor piece up here. We've got our lighter blue up here, and I don't really know what that's supposed to be up there. If that's a star, at least I do have some difference now with having that piece of I guess the strap over the top of it too. Back over here for some titanium white, and this should also make a difference with some of our metals. We're not outlining this whole thing. We're just looking to grab a couple of areas on this, especially here over his eye. And then I'm also going to, and this is my white here. So it's not that yellowish white, it's just the regular old white. Bringing out some highlights. We'll flip this over. We'll do the same on this side. We'll bring out, I'm looking at his face again. Boy, the area where I'd like the most light to be, unfortunately, is pretty much buried underneath that little piece of armor, whatever that thing is on the top of his head there. I'm just changing. There's an awful lot of red there. I do want a little bit more of some kind of a light there, and I'm gonna go back into this, believe it or not, some green here. Just can't have it be all that reddish color. That's not gonna work. See if I can do some more lighter tones along here. And then a brush to blend this a bit like so. Same up here. Now we've got to do some lighter strands on our hair. We'll take some of the indigo, some of the lighter tones here. And this is the kind of thing that the sable brush does well. You can see I'm lining up a bunch of straight brush strokes. Where things start to get a little uneven, that is where these brushes sometimes they run into a little bit of trouble. And like here where you got these braids, that is an area where I'm going to go in here with the synthetic. At least I think that's a braid. I'm going to say it is. That would have just been virtually impossible. But that same sable that was doing okay on the long straight runs, but this has, again, there's some variance in that, or like here where I've got to kind of come at it from the side. I'm literally coming at that from like around here. So see, that lets me get in here. I want to get some light spots again on the horse. Oh, I was thinking that the horse's elbow over there. I'm like, how the heck did it get way over here? That's one of those heads. And we'll get some lights out here, I think on the ends of the hair maybe. What do we want to do back here? I do have some lighter spots there already. the chest. I need there. There's nothing going on here. So we're going to throw some spots over here. Might even come back with some dark ones. But this is where these they're more, like I said, they're some of the more dominant spots as opposed to a bunch of little ones. Maybe they're more like this where it's kind of a larger spot. And maybe we even do that with some of the darker ones. Even a little bit of a lighter color here on our saddle, maybe. This needs either highlights on the end. I can't really make it any darker, so I just gave that some light there. Now we've got our sort of fanchon red / orangey color here. Gonna see if I can't get just a bit more of a light onto this. And I'll probably come back with the blending brush to make that just a little bit softer. Also, so these guys, they need a touch of, this is some of that brown, some of that brown matter over here. Sorry about that. It got a little bit, yeah. Now we've got enough separation between those two areas. We have to somehow, it's tough here because this can't just all be dark. I have to give him some kind of a lower lip here. But then when you look at the reference, and it all is very dark. I'm going to go with some lighter spots again. So I've got some of that yellow, some of that white. I wanted to see what happened. This is also really thick paint here. And yeah, that seems to be sticking. Where am I at? I'm over here. So I've got to remember, I just kind of separate it from everything else because I did want some of this lighter color. See how I do kind of scumble away at the edges right away though? And I'm trying to make a pattern here. I'm looking at the way the spots just kind of flow around the horse, almost like they're like texture wrapped around the horse. Yeah, I'm seeing if I can do that here. Now back in here, that's actually supposed to be fur color back there, so that actually helps to. I thought that was the saddle blanket back there. Nope, that was actually fur texture. Now I'm going to then get darker again here. Because we've been adding a lot of lights. Now it's time to go the other way. Dark spots? Maybe not so much. But some darker things in these kind of recesses here, maybe. And what I can do, I took some of the paint out there and see I'm scumbling this again instead of blending it. Now, if this was just, if we wanted this to be, I don't want to say one color, but just not have spots on it, we just would take the blending brush and just do a nice smooth blending thing here. In this case, we're kind of having to do some scumbling. So that is mostly the ivory black. There is a little bit of the indigo in there. Yes, that to me now has a little more solid shape to it. It was looking a little fuzzy there. A little fuzzy. Now back here on the tail, it got a little bit rough back here. I'm thinking these things are supposed to be probably, well, I guess I could have done them maybe as some kind of gems or whatever, but I'm going to see if I can't just see what I can do on these. Not sure why I'm just kind of doing the gold thing there, but it just seems like that's about what I can do. And I'll lighten this up a little bit more over here again to contrast with color-wise with that. Not so much value-wise, but certainly color-wise. Now that's going to be a bit of a value contrast right there. So that kind of gets set more towards the background. We'll go back to our Fanchon red. Again, I could just be using Terra Rosa here. I was trying not to always rely on that same color. The Fanchon red is in the starter set, so I thought, well, let's just play with that. Okay, let's get ourselves a bit of a more yellow into some of this. Don't want to go darker back here like I've been going over it. So I'm going to take some of the Van Dyke brown, some of the ivory black. Now there's like no thinner added to this whatsoever. And sure enough, that also covers. But you see how it's kind of radiating out in sort of a fur texture here? At least that's the idea. That's the idea. Does it actually? Hopefully it kind of translates that way. Looking for my darks over here. They can't all just be flat dark. There has to be something else, which is why we're going to take some of our... That's our yellow ochre there. Bring some of that back into here. Almost like it is some kind of just dust that's gotten on the hooves. I will use my paper towel here to get some of this paint out of the brush. And we'll just do a little bit of blending here. We don't want it to be just like yellow, like he's got nail polish on or something. But I think now, yeah, that has somewhat of a dusty texture now, or a dusty look to it. That I'm going to tone that down. I'm going to take some of that to use to maybe make a little bit of spots over there. This, yeah, let's get some of our, it's just kind of, now it's getting some of the other colors, just kind of polluting that a little bit. No big deal. Something lighter. I don't know. Maybe we'll even a little bit of red get in there. I couldn't tell you what these are made out of here. If it's supposed to be leather, metal, or whatever. There will be some roughness in the textures of these. I know I've mentioned it several times already. Okay, time to do a little bit of smoothing on this. Back to our horse again, because we just added some things and we want to, like that newer dot right there. So we tone that down again. These, remember we added these? Now they look a little bit less like circles and they have a little more of a like a fur texture that's been pulled down a bit. Uh, these spots, we added these darker ones back here. Let those blend together. Same on the face here. I see we've got to get, again, some kind of thing that his nostrils and the mouth both seriously need. You see that? Yeah. A little bit of a light here. Something there. I don't want to look like he's smiling or something. What's interfering with it a little bit is that ring there. Might do a bit of small bluish spots on the neck there. Now this paint has been thinned down because we've been working with the thicker paint for a while. So I do believe this will stand. Sure enough, it does. Now I'm going back into my yellowish coat. You see how it mixes with the indigo. It doesn't really turn green any at all. It's a gray. But when I mix white with the indigo, I'm going to get one sort of a color, more of a bluish gray. And this sort of turns it more of a neutral gray. It's not yellow enough to make it green. I'm going to once again see if I can put in a more dominant sort of a spot there. It may not work. It might not work. Can always go back, take that away. And I just want to see some of those compared to potentially some sort of lighter spots here. These things, oh boy. I'm going to go with some cadmium yellow here and get a little bit of, yeah. We were able to, I mean, it was nice that we got that darker stuff up on top, but these need to get a little bit of shading down here. I mean, well, lighting. Sorry, we got the shading up there. Now we got to get some light down here. And just while I'm thinking about it here, I'm going to grab some of that brown matter and do a similar thing here. Just like what we did there. Back to some of my, this lighter green. Again, the ochre with the phthalo. Enough of that. We'll try a little bit of that over here now. Yeah. Again, there was too much of the yellow there. A little bit of that green, crazy green color, nah, just does the trick. The last thing you would have thought, you thought, okay, some kind of darker brown, something else. Nope, actually just adding some green was that little bit of difference that it sort of needed. Even on our horse over here, remember we were talking about some of the greens in there, so I'm getting my green on the horse, not quite the way I originally thought that was going to happen. So, as always, I do want to say thanks for all the support on these videos here. Because, and I tried to, like I say, experiment as much as I can, show you as many different things as I can, even things that maybe just don't work. I was that was something I was eagerly anticipating. Now, maybe I give it a shot on something else and it's fantastic and it does something amazing. But here, now it could be just the limitation of how I'm thinking about it. I had a plan for it, and it didn't know what that plan was, and it just said no. Maybe there's something else that was not planned for it, and it ends up being perfect for that. Just like I'm still trying to find the cobalt violet, that was another color that I thought was gonna really be useful, and instead it's been very limited. And this kind of falls into that same category. So who knows, maybe on the next video you see another thing where it's just like, well, okay, I was eagerly anticipating this. I thought it's going to work great. And it just kind of falls flat, at least for me, and what I want it to do. And I'm hoping that by showing you that, yeah, things can maybe work not as planned, and it's not a total disaster. You just kind of go, all right, well, that didn't work. We'll try this instead, or whatever, and just not get just too disappointed with it, because I've seen people get disappointed, and I mean, to the degree that they just stop painting. So that's all I'm trying to do, is make potentially disappointments seem a little less tragic or a little less important. It's not that important. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna put some tufts on here, and I go do this. We'll get some pictures of him. Again, he's just one of 4 guys, but he is sort of the captain, the leader, the chieftain. I suppose probably chieftain would be the better word for him. But I hope this was helpful for you guys. You were able to glean something from this, and I will catch you on the next On the Workbench session. Thanks again.